There is a lot of progress we've made thanks to vaccines. With the exception of improvements in sanitation and water safety, vaccination has saved as many lives as any other public health innovation. Vaccination has led to the eradication of smallpox and the elimination of poliomyelitis and measles from large parts of the world, saving millions of lives. But there is still opportunity to make a greater contribution to people's lives, as 3 million children still die every year from vaccine-preventable diseases, such as pneumonia, meningitis, and diarrhoea. Not to mention that we are quite close to get vaccines for malaria and even HIV. So what are the reasons for which some people still believe vaccines are detrimental? People who are against vaccination are called anti-vaxxers. Anti-vaxxers rely on a study which was later retracted, but was initially published by Andrew Wakefield in 1998 in the prestigious medical journal The Lancet. He claimed a link between the triple vaccine MMR, measles, mumps, rubella, and autism. This study was assessing the cases of 12 children. Although the paper stated that no causal connection was found, after the study's publication, Wakefield went on to hold a press conference asking for suspension of the triple MMR vaccine until more research could be done. His recommendation was to split the triple vaccine into 3 separate vaccines, each to be administered 1 year after the other. It seems that it was this press conference that inflamed the vaccination panic more than the actual published study. 6 years later, in 2004, an investigation was run by Sunday Times' Brian Deere, which found financial conflicts of interest. Wakefield had come across the autistic cases when he was approached by a solicitor's firm. They were trying to sue the manufacturers of the MMR vaccine. He received payments of more than £435,000 for the purpose of building a case against the MMR vaccine. Furthermore, the investigation revealed that Wakefield had applied for a patent for a single jab measles vaccine before he started his campaign against the triple MMR vaccine. After 6 more years, in 2010, The Lancet fully retracts the original study. Since the study was first published, it has been refuted countless times, with the Institute of Medicine of the United States National Academy of Sciences, the CDC, and the UK National Health Service having found no link between vaccines and autism. Another issue with vaccines was that of thimerosal, a substance that was used in some vaccines and which contains mercury. Very small amounts of this compound were being used in order to avoid the development of bacteria in vaccines. Although there was no evidence to back the connection between this substance and autism, thimerosal was removed from all vaccines by 2001. Later studies were conducted to see any differences in autism rates between children who had been vaccinated with thimerosal and without. No differences were found. To this day, the rates of autism continue to increase, despite the substance having been taken out from vaccines. It was to be expected that next to all the other conspiracy theories which re-emerged with COVID-19, anti-vaxxers would also try and make their voice heard. The claim that the reduction in infant vaccination during the coronavirus lockdown caused a reduction in SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, is based on thinking that is anything but logical. Many studies either refuted causation by vaccines of sudden infant death syndrome or proved the beneficial effect of vaccines over this condition. Here are some of these. A 2001 study shows that immunization uptake was strongly associated with a lower risk of SIDS. A 2007 meta-analysis shows beneficial effects of vaccination over SIDS. Immunizations are associated with halving of the risk of SIDS. A 2018 study found no connection between SIDS, ADHD, and vaccines. We found that state-level childhood vaccine uptake for age-appropriate vaccines was neither associated with a decline in the incidence of SIDS nor rise in the prevalence of ADHD. Our findings provide current and evidence-based information to assist providers counseling vaccine-hesitant parents. So we've set out to put together the argument maps which contain the 2 reasons that anti-vaxxers offer against vaccines: autism and sudden infant death syndrome. We have excluded thimerosal, since that is no longer an ingredient of vaccines since 2001. We've created 2 versions of this argument map Just to note that even without rebuttals, the argument that anti-vaxxers make doesn't stand the test of logic. Let's look at the first simplified version. The percentages represent the probability of truth or credibility. Reason 1 has 0% credibility because the study it relies on had financial conflicts and was retracted. Note how even without the studies to refute this initial one, there is 0% credibility for this reason, so often cited by the anti-vaxxers. Reason 2 has 0% credibility because there is no logical link between the two sub-reasons used together to justify the main reason. Since SIDS deaths generally represent 6% of total infant deaths, the decrease of total infant deaths cannot be explained by the decrease in vaccination within the same period. Rather, there is likely a combination of reasons which cause the total decrease in infant deaths. Here, we are also excluding the studies that show vaccinations do not increase SIDS deaths, quite the opposite, in order to show that even without these, the reasons used by anti-vaxxers lack logical thinking. This is a classic case of false causation and false correlation. And here is the version which contains the rebuttal studies. What does this argument map tell us? Well, the rebuttals include studies which are refuting the claims made by the anti-vaxxers. On the branch which supports the idea that MMR vaccines cause autism, we have included the studies which refute this idea. And you can see the percentage of credibility for each of these studies. The overall percentage for the rebuttal is 68%, and since this represents a counter-argument, it is then rolled up with a negative sign. On the branch which supports the idea that vaccines cause SIDS, we also included studies which refute this idea. You can see the overall credibility of these studies. And the rebuttal, being a counter-argument, is then rolled up with a negative sign. And just like in the previous simplified version of this map, this branch of this particular reason has a 0% credibility because it doesn't stand the test of logic. These two different reasons don't conclude logically into the claim made by the anti-vaxxers. As such, the overall credibility of reason 1 and reason 2 are negative numbers. So that is the result of the rebuttals added to the score of the reason. And since the rebuttals, as mentioned before, contain counter-arguments, these are then added with a negative sign. Nevertheless, the algorithm has adjusted the overall conclusion back to 0% in order to avoid confusion. So based on these reasons, there is 0% credibility calculated for the claim that children should not be vaccinated. And in case you want to find all the studies we have referenced in this map, check the description of this video. Do you know of any other reasons used by anti-vaxxers? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to research them and see if they stand the test of logic and science.